Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the London hammer, an iron tool found inside 100-million-year-old rock. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 1936, near the small town of London, Texas, Max Hahn found a piece of rock with a wooden handle protruding from it. When the encasing rock was broken open, it revealed a perfectly formed iron hammer. The Cretaceous-era geological formation surrounding it was dated to roughly 100 million years old, yet iron smelting was supposedly invented only 3,000 years ago. The object was tested. The iron was real. The wood was real. The rock was real. If the hammer was genuinely embedded in 100-million-year-old strata, it would demolish the entire accepted timeline of human civilization. It would mean tool-using humans existed alongside dinosaurs. It would mean every textbook in every school on Earth was catastrophically wrong. Creationist museums adopted the hammer as their most prized exhibit. Geologists offered a different explanation. And the one question no one could fully answer was the one that mattered most. How exactly did an iron hammer end up inside that rock? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Out-of-place artifacts, objects found in geological or archaeological contexts that predate their supposed invention, represent one of the most contentious categories in all of science. The scientific establishment's response to such discoveries has historically fallen into two camps. The first is skeptical investigation, careful re-examination of the dating, the context, and the object itself, which often reveals a mundane explanation. The second, rarer response is acknowledgement, a formal revision of the assumed timeline in light of evidence that cannot be explained away. Both responses have legitimate roles. The history of archaeology includes many cases where enthusiastic amateur discoveries of supposedly ancient anomalies turned out to be forgeries, misidentified natural formations, or artifacts simply displaced from their original layer by post-depositional disturbance. Critical scrutiny of extraordinary claims is not closed-mindedness. It is scientific responsibility, but it must be applied consistently. The same rigorous scrutiny applied to anomalous claims must also be applied to the mainstream assumptions those claims challenge. And sometimes, when the evidence is examined honestly, the mainstream assumption is the one that breaks. The significance of genuine out-of-place artifacts goes beyond the objects themselves. Each one represents a data point in a larger argument about ancient human capability, about what our ancestors understood, what they could engineer, and how much of that knowledge has been lost. The ancient world was not populated by primitive minds in primitive bodies. The brains that looked up at the night sky 40,000 years ago were neurologically identical to ours. Given sufficient time and motivation, they could have discovered and lost almost anything we know today. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding the London hammer, An iron tool found inside 100-million-year-old rock is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Max and Emma Hahn discovered the object in 1936 near London, Texas, while walking along Red Creek. A piece of rock with a wooden handle sticking out caught their attention. The enclosing nodule was broken open by their son in the early 1940s, revealing a complete iron hammerhead with a partially preserved wooden handle embedded inside the concretion. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the hammer measures approximately 15 centimeters in length with a head diameter of around 1.5 centimeters. Metallurgical analysis conducted by Battelle Memorial Institute found the head is composed of 96% iron, 6% chlorine, and 0.74% sulfur, an unusual alloy composition that does not match standard modern industrial manufacturing. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The wooden handle attached to the hammer is partially coalified, a process in which organic material is gradually replaced by carbon under pressure over time. Coalification is normally associated with geological timescales, which some proponents argue supports an ancient origin, though partial coalification can also occur through localized chemical conditions. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, Carl Bohr, director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas, purchased the hammer in 1983. The museum presents it as physical proof of young Earth creationism, arguing that the geological record is compressed into a few thousand years, and that humans and dinosaurs coexisted, a position rejected by the scientific mainstream. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the local geological formation from which the concretion derives is the lower Cretaceous Hensel sand member of the Travis Peak Formation, deposited approximately 110 to 115 million years ago. Creationists cite this formation date as proof of the hammer's antiquity. Geologists note it tells us nothing about when the hammer entered the concretion. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. Glenn Cuban, a researcher specializing in fossil footprints, and creationist Clara Ims published a detailed 1989 analysis arguing the hammer was not embedded in ancient undisturbed strata. He proposed that mineral-rich groundwater deposited a concretion around a relatively recent iron hammer over decades or centuries, a well-documented geological phenomenon. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the London Hammer, an iron tool found inside 100-million-year-old rock. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Glenn Cuban and mainstream geology, the hammer is a post-19th century object around which a mineral concretion formed naturally. Calcite-rich groundwater can encase modern metal objects within decades, mimicking ancient embedding. The surrounding nodule tells us nothing about the hammer's age. The main objection is that partial coalification of the handle still requires explanation if the hammer is genuinely recent. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that Karl Bohr's young Earth creationism, the hammer, is genuine evidence that humans coexisted with creatures of the Cretaceous period, supporting a compressed Earth timeline of a few thousand years rather than billions. This requires rejecting the entire framework of radiometric dating, stratigraphy, and geology, and has found no support in peer-reviewed science. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that independent prehistorical ironworking, a fringe hypothesis that an advanced metalworking culture predating all known civilization produced the hammer, and it became embedded through genuine geological processes. No supporting evidence for such a culture exists anywhere in the archaeological record, and no independent geological assessment has confirmed ancient embedding. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the London Hammer, an iron tool found inside 100-million-year-old rock, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes concretion formation around modern objects is a thoroughly documented geological process. Metal tools, bottles, and even 20th century objects have been found encased in mineral nodules, demonstrating that encasement alone proves nothing about an object's age. Calcite-rich groundwater in limestone regions can produce substantial concretions within years or decades under the right chemical conditions. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented. No independent stratigraphic study has confirmed the hammer was found in situ within undisturbed ancient strata. The Hahn family account describes it lying loose on the surface of Red Creek, not embedded in an exposed rock face. Without documented stratigraphic context, the formation date of surrounding geology cannot be applied to the hammer itself. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the hammer's iron alloy, unusual for modern industrial production, does not confirm ancient manufacture. 19th century hand-forged iron tools were produced in small forges with variable ore sources and could exhibit non-standard compositions. No comparative analysis against period blacksmithing samples has been published, and the Creation Evidence Museum has declined independent scientific examination. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the London hammer, an iron tool found inside 100-million-year-old rock. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Glenn Cuban's 1989 analysis remains the most thorough independent examination of the London hammer, and the concretion explanation fully accounts for all observed evidence without requiring any revision of established geology. The Creation Evidence Museum continues to display the hammer and maintain its ancient origin claim, but has not permitted peer-reviewed independent testing. No accredited geological institution has published a study confirming the hammer's embedding in genuinely ancient, undisturbed strata. The object remains a popular fixture in creationist literature precisely because its mundane explanation, a 19th century hammer enclosed by a young mineral concretion, is less dramatic than the alternative. The real mystery is not the hammer, but why the simpler explanation is so consistently overlooked. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the London Hammer, an iron tool found inside 100-million-year-old rock, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of London Hammer ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.